This is an India Today exclusive. We're discussing Donald Trump's indictment. Joining me is Neama Rahmani, who is former federal prosecutor from the United States of America. Neama, thank you so much for joining us here in India Today. Interesting times and quite difficult too in terms of a lot of questions being now asked on constitutional law, whether if he can, he can't. Let's begin with the case. He has been indicted. Do you think this will be a long-drawn affair and will spill over into the Republican nominee race, as also the presidential race?
I think so. We're witnessing American history. And in a case like this, delay inures to Trump's benefit. It's well established that a sitting president can't be prosecuted. So if Donald Trump wins in November 2024, the whole case goes away. But even if another Republican like DeSantis gets a nomination and takes the White House, DeSantis may try to fire special counsel Jack Smith for good cause. So in this case, Trump is going to try to push this trial past the 2024 election.
And in terms of a very defiant Trump who says he's done no wrong, he says that he's gone by the law. Everybody else has done it. Explain to us how grave are the charges against Donald Trump and how are they different from the others, whether it's Mike Pence, President Biden, or for that matter, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton.
These are very serious charges. And just starting with the classified documents, they have a 10-year maximum. But the reason this is different from Joe Biden and Mike Pence's alleged mishandling of classified materials is that the National Archives asked the former president for over a year to return the documents. He didn't do so. The archives told Trump that they would refer the matter to the Department of Justice if he didn't cooperate. That referral was made, a grand jury was convened, and they issued a subpoena. Trump allegedly refused to comply with the subpoena or partially complied with it, trying to hide documents from the grand jury. Of course, that is what resulted in the unprecedented search warrant that was executed at Trump's Mar-a-Lago home. You can't compare Trump's conduct to Pence and Biden, who may have negligently mishandled classified documents, but appear to have cooperated with the archives to get those returned to where they need to be. I'd also add that this is one of those cases where the cover-up is worse than the crime. The obstruction charges, those are the more serious ones. They have the 20-year statutory maximum. Now, I'm not saying Trump's going to do 20 years in prison or anywhere close to it, but even under the advisory guideline ranges, if he pushes the case to trial, he may be looking at a potential 4-year prison sentence here.
Okay. Donald Trump is calling it a witch hunt. He's saying this is vendetta politics, as many call it. How do you see it? Do you see the case being handled differently for Donald Trump? Were it someone else, would it have been different?
Well, I think there is that political component. This is where law and politics intersect. You have a Democrat in the Oval Office who appointed an attorney general, who appointed a special counsel. And of course, Trump is the leading candidate for the Republican Party. But, this is an issue of complying with the law. And the law clearly says that these documents need to be in the National Archives, or SCIF, which is a secure facility. They can't be in your home, in the bathroom, classified documents spilled all over the floor. So this is an issue that really rises above politics. It's a matter of national security and keeping Americans safe. So I know Trump thinks that he's been treated unfairly, but I would respond to that as you're the one who responded differently and in an inappropriate manner when you were contacted regarding these classified documents. You were asked to return them voluntarily. I note that none of the counts in the indictment, the 31 substantive counts or the additional obstruction-related counts, have anything to do with the documents that were returned. They just relate to the documents that were seized pursuant to that search warrant.
There are a few other areas where Democrats, some of the legal experts in the United States of America have raised concerns, particularly to do with the change in the judge from Goodman to Cornyn. Do you think that will really impact the hearing and the case, given that Cornyn was appointed by Donald Trump?
Well, in most federal cases, there are 2 judges assigned. There's a magistrate judge that handles preliminary matters, and there's the district judge, the more senior judge that actually oversees the trial in a felony case. So, I would hope and expect that Judge Cannon would do the right thing. She's been appointed by Donald Trump and confirmed by the Senate, but she's taken an oath to follow the law. And I know there are folks that are concerned because of who appointed her and how she previously handled the search warrant case. She took a very broad view of executive privilege, appointed a special master, and that ruling was overturned by the also conservative 11th Circuit Court of Appeals here in the United States. I can tell you this, judges do not like to be overturned on appeal. They don't like to be embarrassed like that. So I'm hoping that Judge Cannon learned a bit from her previous dealings with the former president, and she's going to make the right rulings in this case.
And what about the other important aspect? That's the jury. The pool of a jury that would be selected to hear the trial. That certainly has also been questioned, given that it's going to be in South Florida. Is that a concern?
Well, I'm sure the Department of Justice would rather have this case tried in Washington, D.C., which is a very liberal jury pool, would probably be less inclined to agree with some of Trump's arguments. That being said, because the obstruction, because the cover-up, because the tampering with the grand jury evidence, because that all occurred in Palm Beach, venue is really appropriate in the Southern District of Florida. Had Special Counsel Jackson filed in D.C., I think he would have lost a change of venue motion, and we would have ended up in South Florida anyway. So I think he did the right thing by filing there in the first instance.
The other important aspect that a lot of people are raising concerns about is the jury itself, the place where the trial is being held. Throw some light upon the fact that it's going to be in South Florida. Is that advantage Trump? Where do you see this case, and how do you see it placed as of today?
Well, the jury pool in Southern Florida is mixed. Biden did win that district, but did so just by a few percentage points. So you're going to have a pretty evenly divided jury there. I'm going to contrast that to D.C., where the case could have been potentially tried, or in New York, where Trump is currently being prosecuted. Those are two much more liberal jurisdictions.
Okay. And if at all he's convicted, can he still run for president?
Yes. There's nothing in the Constitution that prohibits Trump from holding public office. If he's under indictment, or even if he's convicted, theoretically, he could be in federal prison and still be president of the United States.
And there is no window or room for an impeachment, given the fact that they have numbers in the House.
Impeachment is not a real possibility because, of course, the Republicans control the House, and the Democrats don't have a supermajority in the Senate to clear that 2/3 threshold.
In terms of the 37 counts itself, Neama, if you could just explain to us the few acts, especially the Espionage Act, under which he's being tried, and how grave that really is.
The first 31 counts relate to the Espionage Act, which doesn't require spying. It relates to mishandling of documents related to the national defense. Technically, they don't have to even be classified, but typically these prosecutions involve classified documents. The relating counts are for obstruction of justice, tampering with grand jury evidence, concealing documents in a federal investigation, and making false statements. Those relate to Trump and Walt Nada, his valet's efforts to withhold these documents from the grand jury in the Department of Justice.
Okay, and as a former federal prosecutor, we're all seeing a few of Donald Trump's lawyers quit. Some have actually come out and said that the past crimes were certainly not really crimes and he was being victimized, but this one is different. Is that going to be a problem, a hurdle for Trump, the fact that his own lawyers are quitting?
Donald Trump is a very difficult client for two reasons. First, he doesn't pay his lawyers. Second, he has a reputation for not paying his lawyers, some of whom have engaged in litigation with him. The second is he doesn't usually listen to his lawyers' advice. His lawyers are probably advising him to keep his mouth shut, not to make public statements. Those statements can be only used against him. So when you have a client like Trump who may not pay and may not follow your advice, I can see why a lot of lawyers don't want to handle this case.
Him saying that I've followed the rule of law, that what I did was not wrong. He actually said that I've held documents and it's as per law, and others have also done it. Could that be used against him later?
Yes. So Trump has argued that he has the power to declassify these documents. The problem is there's no evidence that he's followed the proper procedure to do so by notifying the department head and what you have to do to go through the declassification process. The other issue is by making that statement, he's admitting knowledge that the documents were classified and the intent to keep them. So he's really putting all his eggs in one basket. And if the court rejects that argument, then he's admitting two of the elements of the crime.
Right. And finally, before I let you go, is this going to become a major political issue? We know that Donald Trump used Hillary Clinton's email controversy through and through his campaign. Will this be one of the main poll planks for the Democrats, or even his some of his Republican counterparts who will be fighting him at the primaries?
This will be the biggest issue in the 2024 election. We're in unprecedented times, and we've never had a candidate for president be under indictment during the campaign. So this is something that will be the biggest issue in the United States in 2024.
And finally, before I let you go, there are two cases. One is a federal case. The other is within the state ambit. Should he be charged in a state, can he then self-pardon or pardon himself, or that's out of the question? What are the rules for state and for federal?
Trump has unfettered discretion to issue federal pardons, but he's unable to pardon someone for a state crime. That would have to be done by the governor of their respective state.
And so if at all the Manhattan court finds him guilty, that certainly will be a bigger problem for him than the federal case.
Well, the federal case has a potentially longer prison sentence. The Manhattan charges are a little bit less serious because under New York law, the felonies may be reduced to misdemeanors if the fraud wasn't in furtherance of or to cover up another crime. So in terms of the seriousness of the charges and the length of the potential sentence, the federal case is much more serious.
Okay. On that note, Neama Rahmani, thank you so much for joining us here on India Today and explaining to us what this case really is and how difficult it could really get for Donald Trump or not.
Thanks for having me, Geeta.